Hey everyone, welcome to week 5, day 3. This is our look away week. That was lame. On Monday, we did Danny's portrait, where she was kind of looking away, like 3/4 looking away, and that was tough. That was tough to paint. I think you saw me. Evidence is there. You saw me just paint something, scrape it off, paint something, scrape it off. It was just tough. It was very, very tough, but I'm very happy that, those things exist. Like moments where I struggle, you can see where I struggle. And you can't hear me, but trust me, I'm very, very frustrated because I really feel something is escaping me and I have to fight really, really hard to try and get it back. So I'm glad that that's there. Now, the purpose of doing 5 paintings a week is that every painting doesn't look the same. Because if all I was doing is just picking different people and just slowly turning their head away from us, it would be like painting the same painting, even though the subject matter is slightly different. It would be like painting the same painting all the time. And we don't want to do that. We want to explore like those gray areas, and we want to try to define, what does it mean for somebody to want to not engage with us, as our subject matter. So yesterday for our Spanish Tuesdays, Martes Español, I painted my niece, and she was giving our back, but she was also speaking about these left and right hemispheres and how we had access to only one of them. So she was very she was the boss of that space, and I kind of wanted to give it that sense. And today, I'm painting Samu, my son, sleeping, and how he's almost like cocooned in his sheets always. And there's this tiny, tiny little window that gives us a sense of what his face actually looks like. So the challenge here is to just paint a portrait with almost no information. With, the tiniest bit of information has to be exactly right, like spot on right. And if it's not, then it just won't feel like a very particular face, a very particular portrait. So we're gonna do that. And by the way, I don't know if I'm gonna do this like every week, but I actually do it for my own sanity, I feel. Today is also a 4-color palette. So I'm using titanium white, yellow ochre, cad red, and ivory black. And I think it was a perfect painting for that. So that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Okay, let's get started. Just some technical notes. This is actually a watercolor paper. This isn't the moleskin sketchbook paper that I've been working on. Not because I don't think the moleskin paper is fantastic. I actually do. I don't get those sketchbooks for free. I buy every single thing that I have. But I wanted to try something else. This week I'm going to eventually try, I don't know if this week, I think next week I'm going to start to try Mylar. And just to change it up a little bit, and I can also speak about how different materials just feel a little bit different. Right now it doesn't mean that I am choosing them because they fit the subject matter or the way I'm going to paint in a very specific manner. I'm just trying things out. But basically, this watercolor paper, I'm prepping the same way. I'm priming exactly the same. It's about 3 coats of transparent acrylic binder in the front, 1 or 2 coats in the back so it doesn't warp. This one I realized, because it has a lot more cotton than the moleskin paper, all the fibers really, really soak up the primer. And it just feels like it's a little wet. It just feels heavier, the paper, once you prime it. So just be mindful of that. It may take just a little longer for it to stabilize. So just keep that in mind. So if you're priming, let's say the night before you're going to paint, maybe give yourself like 24 more hours, like just another day or a couple more days. So just so the paper can stabilize a little bit. And I'm still using the Holbein grayscale grays. and I have the value 7 for this one. I'm a little more comfortable with the value 7, so it's a little bit lighter. Value 5, it just feels a little dark when I'm painting on it. Doesn't mean that I can't judge my values properly. It just feels a little bit too dark, and it almost feels like the dark ground just kind of seeps through some of the color, and the paintings feel a little heavier. I usually work around those things when I'm painting, so it's not an issue, but just be mindful of that if you're working on a darker value for your ground. I started with the placement of that head, and this is what I've been talking about. This is like a little face that's burrowed in all these like bed sheets. And I wanted to do this painting because if you really look at the size of the features, the space that the features are going to occupy within the page is so small. I mean, it's tiny compared to the wholeness of the paper. So it's an image that is a portrait, and usually portraits anchor a painting that is about a portrait. But the size of this portrait is about, I don't know, I'm just eyeballing it, but it's less than maybe 5% of the painting, of the area of the painting. So when that happens, and this is something that's very cool, but it's also like a weight that is very, very difficult to handle when you're painting. Because right now I was very comfortable with my drawing. I was like, okay, I hit my drawing. I can actually go for the rest of the painting, and I'm going to be confident that when I get to that head, because my drawing is basically there already, I'm going to have, an easy time. And the thing is, when you put, all the eggs in that basket, when you say, okay, this is about this whole painting, the 95% of the painting is actually going to be sustained by this tiny 5% moment that is a hint of a face. You better get your drawing just perfect, absolutely perfect. Because if not, you have all these other almost like secondary characters in your painting that are supposed to be, almost like scaffolding for this tiny little instant that is going to be the burrowed face, that if that's not worth it, that's your exclamation point. That's the cherry on the cake. But if that's not worth it, if that moment isn't like fireworks, and it doesn't have to be just like this shining beacon. No, but you have to land on it and just feel it's perfect. Like it is absolutely perfect. And, that's a ton of pressure, honestly. Because if not, if that moment isn't worth it, once you get there, you're going to be like, it was fine. I mean, we did all these sheets and the pillow and everything else. But once I got to the place that I thought was going to be, boom, just the one place that was going to be a moment of connection in the painting, if it doesn't work, then everything else was just almost worthless. I could be like, well, that sheet, the way it tucks in underneath, it's very nice and painted in a very sensitive way. But if I wasn't able to just really land this painting, to give it like the gravitas, the weight that it needs in the exact moment it needed it, if I can't do that, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're brilliant in 95% of the painting. And this is what's weird. It's like, it's like everything, almost everything about the painting can be painted really well. But that one moment, that one dissonant moment is just going to make it all fall apart. So we have to be like on our game when we do those moments. And I don't know, people don't usually realize it. I think you have to have a good eye, a really good eye to realize where in your painting you are risking everything. You're risking absolutely everything. You have to be brilliant. You have to be as good as you can be. You don't have to be, Bouguereau. You don't have to have this, like, the most amazing 19th century drawing skills. No. But you have to be as good as you can be at that moment. Because, and, this is something that we've all heard. This is something I heard when I was studying, and we were putting a portfolio together, an illustration portfolio. And they were like, you have to put only amazing pieces in. They all have to be great. Because an art director, or whomever was going to be looking at your portfolio, they're going to quickly forget all these amazing pieces once they see that one piece where you struggled. And all they're going to remember is the ugly piece. And this is true not only for for portfolios, but it was, in my case, personally, for life too. I remember when I'd be doing a really large painting and I was working at home, because when I came back from the US from New York, I would stay with my parents, and I was painting in a room and my father would drop by. And I always thought that the places in a painting that I would be struggling with were invisible to other people. It's almost like, no, this is an artist thing. This is, only painters are going to notice that these areas are challenging. My dad, and my dad was amazing because he's probably the most intelligent person I'll ever meet in my life. But he was also very, very cruel. And he would spot just the moment, the one instant in your painting. It could be the tiniest moment where you weren't concentrated. And you were like, okay, I'll leave the pinky for tomorrow. I just blocked it in, but who cares? Or yeah, I know the ear is a tiny bit off and I'll check the angle like in a little bit. He would come in and he would say like, oh, that pinky is giving you trouble, right? Or whoa, that ear, yeah, it looks like it has a weird angle. And it was crazy. Every single time I would say, oh my God, he saw it. Now, you'll see me here. This is like flashbacks from Monday, where I was really kind of just searching and searching and searching for my drawing. And what I noticed was that while the initial drawing felt like everything was good, when I started developing the painting, I realized that it was a lot smaller. When I started painting, I started having a better sense of form, of the three-dimensionality of that head. And I was like, whoa, this is a little too small for that big hair that is popping out, which is my darker mass. So of course that hair is going to be super important. So this is the moment where we kind of panic because everything seemed right. And then suddenly you start feeling, oh my God, it's off, like something's wrong, and I know something's wrong. And it's almost like all you want to do is just keep painting and not think about it. And just say, no, I felt my drawing was right at the beginning. So I'm just going to keep believing it's right. I'm just going to keep thinking it's right. I don't care. It's fine. And the truth is that when those moments bother you, there's only one thing you can do. There's just one thing. And the only thing you can do is just change it. Because if not, you're never going to be at peace with yourself. And that's what happened here. And I was very, very scared because I thought, wow, this drawing is so subtle. The way he's turning his head, the way Samu is turning his head is so, so subtle. And the way his cheek is kind of squished, and his lips are a little squished and deformed because he's just plopping his head on that pillow. That pillow is like swallowing him. That is so, so, so subtle that I was like, I don't know. I think I had it when I first did my initial drawing, but I think I'm going to lose it. If I change it, if I attempt to change it, I'm going to lose it. And that's the feeling that I think we all get, which is like, we know how to draw. And I'm sure a ton of us been to drawing class and go to drawing workshops. And we've worked super, super hard at having this tool. But we also feel so insecure about drawing because drawing can be, it can be such a pain that we feel that we may have done it once, but we're not going to do it twice. Like it was a stroke of luck. Like for some reason we were able to do that one bit of drawing, but now suddenly we're not going to be able to repeat it. Like, don't ask me to repeat this. But we have to trust ourselves that we are going to be able to do it again. If we did it once, chances are you're going to be able to do it again. So that's very, very important. A few technical things from this painting. I wanted and needed to go back to my 4-color palette. So it's titanium white, yellow ochre, cad red, and ivory black. And I say it's important for me because in these paintings, and this is, I guess it's particular to some paintings, but it is in these paintings where I want to feel the most control that I can have in an image without really sacrificing like a ton. And I felt, okay, this palette is going to be perfect for this painting because the one bit of warmness that this painting has, like relative warmness, is going to be in his cheek and in his nose. And I want that to be the tiniest moment of, like, there's life within all these sheets that are just like, it's like a whirlwind of sheets. And you can kind of peek in and see just this tiny bit of like life just peeking through, this redness signifying warmness and life. It's like the evidence of life. And I thought this palette is perfect. I have yellower moments, I have cooler moments, but I don't have any weird hues in this painting. So I can totally control my mixes. And when I need to speak about warmness, I'll just call upon my cat red, which is just an insanely warm pigment. And I'm going to be able to really amplify that feeling of warmness if I control the rest of my paint. And I felt it worked out perfectly because it is a palette, again, that if you're stubborn and you're trying to paint, a blue sky with this palette, no, you're going to suffer and you're going to feel the palette is crap because it is very limited. But if you look at the painting that I'm doing, there's nothing in it that feels like I couldn't have painted it with this palette. And that's when I say, okay, this is going to give me confidence because these colors are actually going to ground me. They're not going to put in front of me challenges where, if I had a broader palette, I may start kind of deviating from my path, from this very, very kind of simple painting that I wanted to do. Because in essence, this painting was just about this dark mass of hair, this tiny bit of warmness right next to it that configures a portrait, this portrait that has to be, again, burrowed in this pillow and these sheets, and then surrounded by these other shapes that just feel abstract enough to make it interesting, but also that you can relate to, like, this sofa. My kids, when they stay with me, I wish I could have a mansion and they could have like these huge rooms where they could be comfortable in and they could stay. But the truth is, when they stay with Danny and I, we have a sofa, and Fer sleeps in the bottom part because it's a bed that kind of tucks in underneath the sofa. And Samu, the couch, just plops and he sleeps there. And I'm always like super scared. I'm like, oh, they think this is super cool now. But I don't know, when they're older, they're going to be like, oh my God, we have to sleep there. But for now, they're happy and they love staying here. So it's this very kind of jagged composition because it has all these diagonals and all these like straight edges. Because I always feel that they're not going to be comfortable in this, space. But they are. They are crazy comfortable and they sleep here and they love it. So I wanted to see if I could paint like that dichotomy. And as far as references, because we haven't mentioned, the biggest one, and I think it's one of the most beautiful paintings, it's Sorolla's wife Clotilde. When she gives birth to her daughter, she's in bed with her daughter. It's one of the most sensitive, beautiful paintings. It's diffused light. Sorolla was such a sensible painter. It's not like he was only capable of painting sunlight with like very warm light and cool violets and purples and blues for shadows. Like, he wasn't a punchy painter. That painting is one of the most sensitive paintings I think ever painted. I don't think there's anyone who could have ever painted a painting like that. Painter like Sorolla, his observational skills, his drawing skills, his skills to draw with paint are just unmatched. It's just, I can't see Sargent painting this. I can't see anyone else painting this. This particular painting is at Sorolla's house in Madrid. So if you're ever there, just go and look at that painting for hours because it is a delight to see, honestly. I'm remembering that painting and then I'm looking at, this tiny little painting I'm doing with Samu. And my hand is so heavy. Like, I feel so heavy-handed compared to Sorolla that it's just, every day is just an opportunity to just learn and become more sensitive. And something that is closer to my kind of butchery hands is Toulouse-Lautrec. He did these lovers series. I don't know if you know those paintings. It's these two people that are in bed. And he did a couple of paintings. I think I know of 3 paintings. Maybe there are more. They're all the same. I think they're all oil on cardboard. He was always using that color of the cardboard as ground. And it's what Toulouse-Lautrec did best, which is this marriage between drawing and painting, where you don't really understand when the drawing stops and the painting starts. It's almost like all the elements just kind of blend into each other perfectly. So it's very sensual, very sexual also, but very tender at moments too. So I think it's beautiful to look at them as a series. And those were in my mind. And of course, whenever I paint my kids and whenever I choose to paint them while they're sleeping, there's a beautiful sense of stillness to that you can't pose. You can't tell your kids to pose. And I'm reminded of Repin's daughter painting, the one of Nadia. And it's a gorgeous painting. I mean, her head is actually kind of like tipped to the side, and it's a very little kid thing to do. It's almost like their head weighs way too much for them, and they just can't keep it up, and it just kind of falls to the side. But if you see that, it's like, I mean, you have to have repping skills to do this, because for any other kid, it's like, my God, they're not going to sit still. And granted, this was 1880s Russia, so he probably told, his daughter, just be still, and she was still. She was like, okay, I have to do what my father tells me to do. But regardless, being still is not natural for a kid. It's the most unnatural state for children. So the only moment where it is natural is when they're sleeping, when they're resting, when they're genuinely resting. And to be able to catch them as they rest, like for their face to feel like they're resting, for their body to feel like they're resting, it's such a beautiful thing, because there you can access what a kid actually feels like. So I think those are pretty cool references. And again, those are always things that, yes, my mind is thinking about painting, but it's thinking about the bigger kind of context of history of painting. So I hope you enjoyed this one. This one was tough because, a lot of chips were put into that tiny, tiny little instance. But I think even though I lost it at one moment and I had to like wipe it off, it was, it kind of made me believe that I had to be, super, super concentrated to try and get it back. There's an urgency when you scrape something that we all should feel, that if we're fighting for something, we're fighting for this tiny little bit of drawing, we have to feel like this is the most important thing, that, it's dire that you get your drawing right. So I felt that, and I was like, okay, game on. I have to really, really try to fight to get this tiny, tiny moment. And I have to assess why I wasn't getting it. So I kind of, not very quickly, but I figured out, okay, I'm doing all these features a little too small for this size of a head. So I have to be careful, almost like step away, even if I'm right on top of this painting, because it is a small painting, kind of step away and try to get my bigger angles right. And I was very happy. I was super happy. Again, my 4-color palette, super, super cool in these paintings. It helps out a ton. It's an invitation that I always do when I use it, to tell people, use this palette, because it is the most benign tool a painter can have. And it is the most academic way to learn how to paint, because you have everything in there to understand color and to understand form. And yes, it is limited, but it's only limited by the way you use it. So if you are struggling with color, if you are struggling with all those hues that are super saturated, go back to this. There's no shame in painting. Everything about painting is hard, so there's no shame in saying, I'm going to do a grisaille, I'm just going to work with white and raw umber, white and ivory black, or I'm just going to go with, a 4-color palette like this one. So hope you guys enjoy it. I actually loved it, loved painting this. So that was it for today. Thank you guys for hanging out. Bye. See you tomorrow.